Number 6. Operations Department.
Good afternoon, directors. So while the
You're looking
while
for,
the PowerPoint loads, one thing to note in the ops report that's a little bit different in the Jenny Lind service areas, staff thought it important to also have a list of active issues that they're working on. So not only is this within the Jenny Lind distribution system a list of accomplishments for November, but it also lists out what they weren't able to get to, and they get to a heck of a lot. So I just wanted to highlight that and then jump in here to the presentation. So Baldwin, service line abandonment. So you guys can see in this image here. So image on the left, kind of hard to see. There's a service line and a corporation stop, which is what's directly threaded into the water main, failed. So oftentimes this is, when the development was constructed, a lot of services were constructed to empty lots. And so we will find these, and if it's in a tough spot, so to speak, on the roadway, or kind of a difficult shutdown that requires the shutdown of a lot of our customers to repair, we'll go ahead and just abandon it. And then at that point in time in the future, if somebody buys that lot, needs a service connection, we'll go ahead and reconnect it. So this is also the case on Copper Cove Drive. We have these service laterals that pop up, and they're to an empty box in a field. And so when we have the opportunity, if it's a dangerous location, we'll go ahead and abandon it. So this is
Damon, I got a quick question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
your report in your in the packet.
yeah.
On page 2, you have a chart.
Yes.
It's showing water production district-wide in millions of gallons.
That's correct.
And it looks like the 2023 line is down to 0 production in November on purpose, or what?
So we're the operations department, and we're not that savvy at making the last. So you're always going to be a month behind. So this report should just look at October as being your endpoint. And we will work on within operations of making the line that goes to 0 disappear, so that doesn't give you the false impression that we didn't produce any water there. We just,
Okay.
Jesse and I work on that. Yeah. So
I mean, this is a
if you
huge,
can imagine,
huge failure that
picture
none
in
of
your
us
mind's
heard about.
eye, that production ends in October. One thing though to note, I'm glad you brought this up because we don't often talk about this graph, is that you can see that production has, 2021, we were hot and heavy, and I think that's some of that can be attributed to COVID. We had a lot of folks that were in the community as a result of COVID, but you can see in 2023 we've dropped back down to kind of the lower levels that were more attributable to when we were in a drought conservation mode.
Does it also have to do with all the work we've done on the distribution?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think it's both.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Man, if you guys ever tried the technical way of putting a piece of paper over, like,
Yeah.
and then taking a picture of it?
Actually, that's very technical. We didn't some whiteout
Or whiteout.
do this
Yeah,
trick.
whiteout.
Yeah.
There you go.
Little sticky
Yeah.
note on there.
So for, to digress a little bit too far, it's just like I can grab the image and put it right into the report. So it's like, but yeah, we'll definitely clean that up.
Well, another suggestion is the lines are so close together and it's really, really difficult. Is it possible to make it just zone in on from 100 to 100 to 200 so that the lines are, so that you see some differences between the years? And looking at it from this angle, this looks like every year is exactly the same.
I might
Yeah.
make a suggestion that instead of us trying to solve it here, maybe we just get Kelly to advise the operations department on this, because he's a master at this.
Yes.
Okay.
And well, yes, and absolutely. And I think we could probably just make it its own page and make it landscape so you can see it all.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And that way you can differentiate between.
And I understand Dylan's in IT. He's pretty damn good at this.
Yeah,
stuff.
yes. Thanks, you guys. Ahead of time.
And then we'll be able to spend more time on
Right.
that page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about production. even.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Okay,
You can anticipate that change for sure. Okay, so these slides are really interesting, these images. So if you're just imagining that you're in the driveway here, this concrete driveway in Rancho, and you look over and you see a meter set, and you can see the blue marks in the middle of the street. And then you turn around and you look behind you and you see all that green grass on the down gradient side of the driveway. So we have water perking out. We have a service line leak. We know that. We have water perking out. It's showing up down the hill in the drainage, and it's making the grass green. And you know, you've got shrubs down there that are growing. And our guys listen, and then they pinpoint the leak to be in the middle of the street, right where those blue marks are. So just kind of looking, you know, the image on the left, you're looking downhill and you can see where they marked the leak. Okay, the leak is here. And this is what happens. And this is what's so challenging about Poker Flat and Copperopolis, because you can have leaks that perk 300, 400 feet away from where they actually are. And this is, you know, just kind of a testament to our folks in Rancho, how good they are. So they marked that location. And you can see the image on the left, they're jackhammering out that spot. And then the image on the right is the service line. Kind of hard to see, but at the top, so kind of like the top 25% of the service line, you see water shooting on the side of it. So they nailed it. And so
Look at even the backfill on the road. It's like,
exactly. And I have a couple of pictures of the backfill, and we have folks that saw that backfill firsthand. It's kind of astounding, but hats off to our guys and the equipment. They know how to use listening device equipment. They're really good at it, and they do a great job. This one, service line T and curb stop replacement for a meter box set. So you can, the nice one in the image on the left, you can see the crimpers on the T, kind of like at the bottom of the T. So this is to isolate the water from the main. So we actually pinch the service line so we can actually replace that T, and all that corroded brass that you see on the image on the left is gone. And there's a couple repair clamps. You can see they're now gone. But there is a repair clamp in the image on the right where that crimp was, because when our guys go ahead and crimp a line off, they make a weak spot, and we always cover that weak spot back up with a repair clamp. Just to illustrate that they're really thoughtful about the work that goes on. Here's another flare. So this one is not actually in the coupling to two sections of pipe. It's right there in the middle of the pipe. And our guys jump on it and get those replaced rather quickly. And you can kind of see what the cause here is on the brass. Just over time, that service inside of that flared connection gives up the ghost a little bit. And then the water actually has the strength to erode away the brass. And we see that a lot throughout our distribution systems. So this is an image of the tour that we took some folks on of the distribution system. And to your point, Director Davidson, it's a little hard to tell, but on the right side of both of these images is where the distribution crew in years past had put a repair clamp and backfilled with AB with base rock. And then what we were going to do in this repair is go all the way to the main and replace the whole service. So all of that fill on the left side of each picture is the native, and you can see those big old giant rocks that just live on top of the service that cause the leak. And so like we talked about before, we have the distribution crews that will jump in there, put a repair clamp on, kind of do the immediate emergency work, stop the leak. And then oftentimes our utility crew will go through then and wholesale replace. Well, when our distribution guys have a chance, they also do that. They'll say, hey, we've been in this hole 4 times. We're only 2 feet away from the water main. Let's go ahead and just extend this trench 2 more feet and replace the whole thing. So this is what Mike and Francisco and Mike got to see when we were out in the field, was that very hole. And Curtis and Mike DeBerg and members of our utility crew, Joe Kelly and Chris Reese, they all just did a fabulous job. And hats off to everybody that, you know, hats off to you all for taking the time to go see what it is that they do. They do great work.
And Damon, in the
Yeah.
prior slide, I saw somebody that with a vest on. Is that a new employee? That guy on the right?
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
some new employees there. Yep.
I see.
Looking
Okay.
good in that high vis. Yeah.
Great.
So here's West Point, you know, and you guys all acknowledge that on service laterals over time, you know, you get the repair clamp on the black service line. It's It's just kind of, it's the appetizer before every meal in the operations report. This is an interesting one because it almost looks like there's a pipe, a hose clamp in the image on the left on that one failure
Yeah.
there. So we're not really sure how that happened. And then you can see, hopefully that's a service really close by, but I'm not. That's okay. So that explains a lot. So sometimes you have well-meaning folks that try to stop a leak. Just keeps on going. Some more work in West Point. So this is Acorn Way is a section of the raw line that comes from the Middle Fork pump station. So we have a Middle Fork McCallum River pump station and we push water halfway up the hill and the Acorn pump station takes it the rest of the way. And there's a Y on that raw water pipeline alignment that had a leak. CAL FIRE 2-inch had a leak on at their meter. So the crew was able to put in a meter riser. That's that brass apparatus you see there with the 2-bolt flanged connection. So really nice, best possible situation, really. The lay length was the same and they were able to just drop that in on a riser and put a brand new AMI meter in there and kind of get back in action.
I have
Yeah.
one question. Whenever you go up there and you find all these repairs or these leaks, at all times you're looking at ways of improving that infrastructure. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're changing your pipes or
Yep, absolutely. And that can all be attributed to the staff that are in the field in those locations. Case in point, the next slide right here. So we have these two meter sets, they're called. You have a meter box in the ground that somebody's cutting this corner and driving over those meter boxes and just crushing all of the meter, causing water leaks. And so we put the bollards in there. We talk to the neighbors and talk to everybody and say, hey, we're going to put bollards here at our meter sets so we can protect our infrastructure. So we're always trying to protect and improve and make our systems better. So here's a septic tank installation. So what usually happens with our collections and construction crews, we dig the hole for the septic tank install. And then when we purchase the tank, the company will just come set it exactly where we want it, where we dug the hole, because we don't have equipment that's strong enough, powerful enough to drop that in. And we don't want to have to drop a septic tank here at the yard and, damage the yard in some way and then have to throw it on the back of a truck and haul it to wherever it's going to live.
That's what
Exactly.
that would be silly for
Right.
us to be doing that.
Yes. And so it's just, highlight how good our guys are. I mean, this tank hole is just like right to spec, perfect. Dropped it right in, put the risers on it. And we're in action. So, and everybody's happy. So hats off to everybody. That tank was, I've never. Okay, gotcha. So a couple more images of the after of the septic tank install with the risers on the tank. So White Pines is complete. All the tulies were removed. The last gasp was to install the buoys at the spillway because the spillway is now functioning as a true spillway. So when you go up to White Pines nowadays, you'll see actual buoys at the spillway, giving you a heads up to kind of keep away from the spillway. And then, the variability of what our construction crew does, go from installing buoys at White Pines and in septic tanks in West Point to tapping ductile iron on a 6-inch pipeline at the Forest Meadows waste treatment plant. Right, that is, yep. So, and that's attributed to the UV project. So we want to make sure that there's no air whatsoever as that water enters that trough. Ebbets Pass is not immune to water leaks. And so Fairway Drive, here we are, you guys see this a lot in certain service areas, in certain areas, wet asphalt, and our guys get on it. And then you can see the image on the right there. It looks like at the connection to the main at a coupling, water just blowing out. And so guys jump in, get that handled, get that fixed, and we get back in business. Some system O&M cleanup cleaning out around a fire hydrant and making it usable again. Washout associated with stormwater runoff. So some of these areas that Caltrans or the county wasn't able to incorporate into FEMA reimbursement requests, we can drop some base rock in there, put some rocks and go ahead and protect our valves.
Are we still eligible for FEMA reimbursement on these projects or not?
Not for this, but
Too far gone.
yeah, yep. But we have all of the ones that we found during the event, they're all in, and we're actually one of the first completers, if you will, if that's a word, of all of our applications for the emergency reimbursement funding for the county. So we're kind of ahead of schedule on everybody else. So it's hats off to our folks. Big trees, 2-inch. I'm not sure what this valve was, if it was initially going to be, was it a blow off or an air relief valve? I'm not sure, but future blow off. Gotcha. So this box was leaking, this line was leaking. So our guys got in there, and just a great picture on the right. I think, the above picture, you can see kind of the work that they're doing. You got somebody ready to hand over the tools, somebody ready to hand over the core, and your safety viz vest for a.
If you had turned that 180 and put a couple hands on that guy's feet, it would have been way better.
Yeah, yes. That's good. You're going to see some more changes to the option report.
Creative.
We're kind of Dylan Smith's world meets the field, understanding pressure and transient pressure surges. So we have pressure gauges that we can put on fire hydrants throughout our distribution systems. And then we can actually trend that information and load it up into a computer and understand how our system is functioning. So when a pump kicks on, if there's a control valve that's slow to operate on the upstream or downstream side of that pump, we can get a pressure surge. There's numerous ways that you can see changes in pressure. So our guys are working to understand how the system works. And if we can reduce pressure surges, we can reduce leaks. So it's really important work. So is storm and winter prep. So here we are with a pile of lumber. And then it looks like we're building some boxes on the right. And then, more boxes, they all look really nice and green. And then we go out to our brand new, newly constructed tanks with our outlet valves and our control valves. And we put those boxes that the guys constructed on there, and we insulate everything. So, just some of the work that our guys are able to do when they're not out fixing leaks, and they do great clean work. So hats off to them. Some more of that. And you can see the tapped spigots on the tanks that we use to pull samples for water quality. This is at our A tank site in the Jenny Lind water system in La Cantena, just cleaning up around the tank, construction crew, always trying to make sure that our sites are clean and tidy. So this is the washout that happened as a result of a water line leak, a service line leak on the left. You can see the hillside washed out. And so our construction crews, the kind of work they do, the image on the right, they restore the integrity of the embankment and then put straw and wattle down, cocoa matting, and get it ready for winter time. A couple pictures of the Redwood tank at the B tank site, just so you can kind of see how TNS construction went about dismantling the tank and what those staves look like stacked up there in the inside of the tank. The tank is now gone, the foundation's gone, and they're moving forward in earnest at that site. Filter startup in West Point. So this is the brand new filter. It's a mirror image essentially of a filter that already exists at West Point, just brand new. And you can kind of see that the piping hasn't been completely painted yet. So this is the electrical was actually being tested during these photos. So testing whether or not valves open, whether or not airlines are charged when they're asked to be charged through the electrical components, the switches, the solenoids. And now jumping into what some of the work our electrical crew did last month. So this is the generator, West Point lift station. So there's one lift station in West Point. Generator just froze. And so our guys basically had to reestablish communication between the controller or the brain of the generator to the generator itself. A solenoid replacement at the Jenny Lind Water Treatment Plant. So this controls the raw water feed to sections of filters 3 and 4. So if these fail, our electricians, because obviously this is directly related to the provision of drinking water. New human machine interface at the A-tank pump station. So the A-tank pump station is a key critical hub for conveying water throughout the Jenny Lind distribution system. And if our folks can't see what they're doing when they're trying to interact with the pumps through the HMI, that's a problem. So our electricians replace that. We have a biologist on staff who actually is a wastewater treatment operator. And Zach found this. I want to say it's an immature Cooper's hawk in the oxidation ditch at the Arnold Waste Plant. And so he rescued it, and he has a wonderful talent with animals. So brought it back, and imagine your surprise as an operator when you show up at the Arnold Waste Plant, there's a hawk in the lab. But yeah, he brought it back and let it go, and it still hasn't returned, he said, to say thank you. So he's waiting for it to come back. Some pics of the construction crew at Dillon's Memorial. Hats off to everybody that was involved in that. Just no words, really. The trucks that Dillon drove on a daily basis with the construction crew in front, and the turnout staff at his memorial. So just really hats off to everybody that was involved. And back to the hawk.
Great.
I got a quick, one more quick question. Speaking of cleanup, you're talking about cleanup, getting ready for winter and whatnot. We had just wanted to follow up on former employee, pointed out a piece of property in the Valley Springs area. Just want to see if there's any update on cleaning that up.
Yes, so if it's the one I believe you're talking about along Hogan Dam Road.
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, yeah, that work is done. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, awesome.
That work's done. And I'll have
Thank you.
pictures. I'll actually have pictures for you in January. There was a request that we clean up our Huckleberry lift station site
Oh, I remember
in
that.
La
Right.
Cantera, and
Mhm.
literally that day, facilities maintenance tech, Eric, was on site, taking evaluating what was said. And so everything's cleaned up.
And then following up on another in Copperopolis where we had some lack of painting. Buildings, and then I'm talking 6-8 months ago and now.
So the old treatment plant, yes, was painted, and there was some privacy staves that were falling apart that were replaced at the old treatment plant.
Okay,
However, we still do have the raw water pump station at the Kiva boat launch that we do need to address. So that building will still need to be painted. Yep,
it's on our list.
it is on our list. It's
Okay,
and we do have operations has funds for building maintenance. However, we're going to have to get creative like we did with the water plant with this Kiva raw water pump station for sure. Because the
Oh,
funds
thank
aren't
you.
enough to cover the whole.
good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Um, You and I were involved in a workshop. And so were you going to talk about that one, or was Mike?
Sure, well, it's in my office report. So there's the CARB, California Air Resources Board has 4 working groups related to the implementation of the Clean Fleets Rule. And they're called the truck implementation groups, and one is Borderlands. So they want to look at the Clean Fleets Rule from the perspective of trucks crossing the border from Mexico into California. There's a group that wants to talk about and look at outreach. How do we educate folks on the Clean Fleets Rule? And there's the rules and regulations group that really kind of focuses into the details associated with the current rules and regs. And then there's the infrastructure group, and I'm on the infrastructure group. And so kind of recognizing the obvious, which is quite refreshing to be in this group with these folks. Right out of the gate, we're talking about the grid, and we're talking about grid reliability. So we spent the better part of 4 hours talking about charging stations and grid reliability, for folks that are going to be required to purchase electric trucks next year, next month. So as you replace vehicles, our urban counterparts are going to have to replace their gas and diesel powered trucks with electric. So we talked about that in great detail, and Bertha attended that meeting. And we plan to meet. So one thing that kind of happens as all these 4 different groups meet, we learn something. One group makes a recommendation that the others adopt. So we didn't necessarily talk about increasing the frequency of our meetings in the infrastructure group. However, we plan to, because the rules and regs group understands that we have to can't meet quarterly to make this effective. We have to meet every month. So you can anticipate a meeting next month for all the groups. That said, there's Assembly Bill 1594, which kind of addresses the clean fleets regulation for CARB that says if you're essentially a water and wastewater utility, and you need to replace a truck that addresses emergencies, you can do so with a gas or diesel powered truck. And so within these clean fleets implementation group conversations, the Air Resources Board acknowledged that they will amend the clean fleets regulation to make that acknowledgement that says essentially water and wastewater utilities can replace. There's no exemption requirements and there's no extension requirements for them. If they need to replace an emergency vehicle with a gas or diesel powered emergency vehicle, they can do so.
What's a definition of an emergency?
Well, so we haven't talked about that yet, but
And do we have to start reporting incidents as emergencies?
I would contend that when it comes to public health and safety, all of the issues that our vehicles address, and this was kind of the climate of the room, are emergencies.
Well, I know it's the climate of all the participants, but it's not the
Yeah.
climate of the state of California.
What's the,
No.
what is it, AB what?
1594. So I can tell you also that to dive into some of what you're talking about, Director Davidson, is Mountain Counties Water Resources Association plans to have some workshops in the late winter, early spring, to talk about AB 1594 and how it's going to apply to us specifically, meaning the rural utilities, because we're not required to comply until 2027.
Oh,
So part of the push for the urban folks right now that have to comply though in 24 is we need to understand what's going on. So next month you can anticipate a lot of the conversation will be around from at least the water side, because within the whole CARB conversation, water and wastewater are a small part, but all of those folks that are involved are really trying to push the conversation with.
Well, in Monterey at that breakout session, whatever, where we had the head of distribution from PG&E basically tell us that, there was no guarantees that they could bring the power to have charging stations to our existing facilities, that we may have to purchase other facilities in other areas, and that we should be prepared to charge during the day. Those were her words. Is there a we can't comply group? I say that jokingly, but I brought this up to Michael a long time ago. It's like, I'd like to get our application in now and have a decision from PG&E that says, hey, we can't do it.
Right.
Because that's basically what they told us. So I don't know when we can actually make the application to say, hey, we want to plan for this future. This is what we believe we need. Can you give us that? And they're going to tell us, no, we can't. And
Right.
so then I just think that we need to have that ammunition to say, look, we've done everything we can to comply, but we can't buy electric vehicles and charge them in another county.
So that was a huge, long, very focused part of the rules and regs conversation, is exactly what you talked about. And unfortunately for the urban folks, so you can apply for an exemption based on the fact that the power provider cannot provide you with power or cannot accommodate the request for additional charging stations. They needed to submit that request for extension by the end of December of 23, the end of this month. And to date, CARB, the Air Resources Board, has not received any extension requests. And so that fact tells everybody that that provision within the regulation was lost on everyone. And so kind of a big circle back in that conversation is we need to talk about this provision and we need to talk about this rule, because none of us understood that. The rural folks are kind of sitting back and we understand that. And we made the point, just exactly what you said, that we could come down to, our power purveyor could tell us, okay, in 6 years, 7 years, we'll get you the power you need for West Point for 2 charging stations. And we're not a priority. We're not San Francisco. We're not Sacramento in terms of, you know, the power demand. And so what does that look like? So that conversation is going to continue, but at least at the outset, the urban folks are really pushing for some sort of amendment to the extension. One of the frustrating things within these CARB conversations, though, is the CARB staff continually remind all of us that we're not here to make any amendments or any changes to what exists currently. The spirit of everything is to focus on how do we get this bird off the ground. And so we're constantly kind of just being redirected to, okay, well, yeah, okay, let's work on that. Let's set this aside. But hey, for those of you that do have a grid that's acceptable, what are you going to do to get this off the ground? And so then everything kind of stalls and we invariably end up talking again about the issue at hand. And so,
You're a better man than me. I couldn't hack it.
Well, and I was just gonna say, so they may not have a we can't comply group, but to have Damon's voice on that group is huge because he can serve as the voice for the practical reality, the challenges that we face. And so just kudos to Damon for getting himself onto that group and.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, may I just add that as Damon said, I was there and listening to it, and the group was there were over 40 attendees, and these were general managers, assistant GMs, and consultants, and what have you on this infrastructure thing. CCWD can feel very, very good about our representation through Damon, because Damon is there to tell them the reality of what it's all about.
thank you.
And
He's also
we're-
working with Mountain Counties on,
Yeah.
and they have got involved with AB 1594. They have
They did.
legislative committee meeting this week on Friday. And this is one of the items. And so it is good to see our legislator here in California hopefully coming up with some carve outs for this. And this is great for utility.
will you be there at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
then you
thank
can, give us a readout of what was discussed or what have you, or status.
Well, yeah, but Mountain Counties was one of our
Right.
greatest advocacy
Mhm.
programs here in the state.
Oh, yeah, I
They-
know.
They do
Uh-huh.
follow. This is just one of the items that we
Mhm.
discussed. But
Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
okay.
thank you.
Thanks.